So my name is Lillian Weaver, and I'm from Oregon, McMinnville, Oregon. I've played Frisbee now for 10 years. I started in high school, and then I went and played at the University of Oregon for 4 years, plus 1 year of Portland Schwa. And just under a year ago, I moved to Medellín, Colombia. And so I graduated from the University of Oregon in a year ago, June. And I'd studied Spanish all through high school, all through college. And I wanted to actually go and become fluent instead of just reading and writing and talking with classmates who are kind of at my same level. And the best combination of ultimate and Spanish is Medellín, Colombia, especially as a female player. So yeah, I showed up in September. I'd gotten in touch with Manuela Cardenas through my teammate from Oregon, Jesse Schaffner. They were playing together on Molly Brown. So done some Facebook messaging. I showed up. I think I got into Medellín like 3 in the morning, made it to my hostel, slept for I don't know how long. And that night I went to my first Revolution practice. And so yeah, I just jumped right in. Within the first week, they had, obviously just opened their arms to me, and they had invited me to play nationals. They'd invited me to play at their U24 team, and I also ended up going to the Pan American Championships with Revolution. So it was really just jumped in head first. And it's, in terms of playing Ultimate there, it is very different from US Ultimate and has been quite hard for me actually in terms of what it's like on the field, in terms of language, in terms of off-field cultural differences, but obviously fantastic and absolutely worth it. I think other than the language, Colombian Ultimate is a lot more about the individual. Well, Revolution specifically is a lot more about what the individual is doing, what the individual needs to do, whereas I came from teams of love and community and always supporting, and when somebody makes a mistake, you say, that's okay, you'll get it next time. And that's not really the Colombian style. It's to say, hey, look at what happened and what can you do to fix that. And I think there's a lot of value in that, but I also see that, especially with the kids I'm coaching right now, also coaching, with the kids I'm coaching, they lose some of that supportiveness, I think, and get caught up in finding blame. But as they get older, they discover ways to find it from within themselves, and not so much blame as really looking at where the adjustment needs to be made. But it takes time and is very difficult. So I'm playing with the U24, I guess I'll talk about that for a little bit. That was a pretty incredible part as well, because with Revolution, we have people as young as maybe 17 or 18 and as old as late 30s. But with the U24s, I was with my peers, with my age group, shared interests. And so hanging out with that group gave me a really tight friend group. Going to Australia, traveling with them, also fantastic. But that was when I discovered another challenge, which is when I'm in between the two cultures, the kind of the westernized, whatever you want to call it, and the non-westernized is difficult for me because I feel split. And so sometimes also when I was in Cincinnati playing Worlds, also I went and played with Revolution in a professional game in Texas. There's all times when I experienced this kind of division between the two, where I'd be with the Colombians and maybe someone from the US would do something and I would feel embarrassed by it, but then the Colombians would do something and I would also feel embarrassed by that. It was like being defensive of both communities, caught in between. But just opened all the doors for me, because as I'm talking, I'm thinking of all the other, I went to Austin, Texas, played that professional game. It was, the inaugural women's professional game in Texas. And the Australia stuff, playing in Cincinnati, of course. One example from U24s of a challenge was the uniforms. And in Colombia, personal appearance is really important, not just ultimate. In Colombia in general, personal appearance is showing respect for yourself and it's showing respect for the people around you. And I would say the U.S. teams in general have a reputation for being slobs. And so that was a little strange for me, is that we had to have not just all black socks, but matching socks, like very specific. And the girls will do hair and makeup before games. Not all, but some of them will do that. You'll see often Colombian teams with their bags all in a nice line. Washing the uniforms is daily. We wash uniforms daily, or maybe if you're going to push it, every other day. So yeah, that was a challenge for me. And I think maybe the most fascinating thing, something that I just didn't know at all going into it, was how the money worked and how payments worked and what that looked like from their end. And I still don't really understand how they make things happen. Latin America is known as the land of magical realism. And from Colombia, Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And that is also how Colombian Ultimate works. That's how I felt when I watched Revolution play the U.S. Open when I was still home in Oregon last summer. It's just like things that shouldn't work, that I was taught don't work, shouldn't work, worked again and again. And the same thing happens with paying for things. So for Cincinnati, we showed up and it's like people didn't really have the money to pay for the hotels and whatnot, but they just say yes and then do it one way or another, whether it's we're selling discs and shirts and hats and gloves and socks, and I think I'm forgetting at least a couple of items. We did all sorts of fundraisers, and yes, U.S. teams do that too, but with U.S. teams it's much more, everyone kind of just pay for yourself, especially once you're at club level. College is a little more fundraising, but there, that is the only way that they will ever make it to these international events. And I guess to give you an idea about what costs look like in Colombia, a good lunch, kind of maybe an expat cafe lunch would be $4 US. You can find also a good quantity of food at a cheaper place for about $2 US. So, and I guess to explain a little more about that money raising process is Revolution. We'll go with Revolution now. Revolution practices twice a week for 3 hours. So it's a total of 6 hours of practice per week. And we also have extra, we call it like a track workout, a sprint workout, and weightlifting that we have to do. But of the 6 hours of team time, 3 of those hours are either talking about money or talking about mental training. And I'd say split evenly between those two items. And so that was kind of the process. Is we show up on Wednesday or Friday, and we go up in the bleachers and we sit down, and everybody says what they're doing to raise money for the team. They say what they need help with, and we divide it up into groups and came up with different projects. But it was, it was intense. I've never experienced anything like that. And when I first got there, my thought was like, well, I'd rather just do my job. I'd rather just work and pay for it that way. And pretty quickly I realized like that's not even feasible. That doesn't even cross their minds. So I wish I could tell you exactly how this all ends up working out, but no, they just make the impossible happen again and again. It's absolutely incredible. And sometimes they don't. It's, that was an experience with the U24 team. I showed up and they'd already had tryouts and whatnot, And so I felt kind of weird about jumping into the team, but then I realized that there were, I think I made them 18 total, and the very common thing to hear was someone salió, they left, they dropped out, and you say why, and even if you ask why, the person turns and looks at you and it's like, why, it's because they couldn't pay. So yeah, sometimes it happens, and often it also doesn't. And then I guess maybe the last thing would be the mental training for Revolution, which was also quite different and challenging for me. And I am still, again, it's like the money, I still am not totally sure I understand half of it. So the other hour and a half of non-field time with Revolution was mental training. And it's all about the individual. What am I doing? And a lot of looking at where I'm messing up. A lot of focus on mistakes, which that I don't think that happens in U.S. teams nearly as much. And it was definitely hard for me. It's like, I learned in University of Oregon, sometimes a turnover is okay. Sometimes we want to throw that turnover, and that is a true once in a while in Colombian Ultimate, but I mean that's not at all their thinking. It is, we are going to play impeccably. There's no reason that we should ever make a mistake if we're all concentrating. So on the field, we're supposed to have acts that we do, physical things. So for example, I'm having trouble cutting. My act is going to be to actually touch my foot to the sideline. That's one, again, I'm stealing it from gringos still, so I'm still not quite there. But it's something physical that you do, or you'll see a lot of Colombians who have Sharpie up and down their arms, which might have a word or a symbol or whatnot, and it's all about always being concentrated on the field and never letting that slip, because their idea is that if you can always maintain that concentration, it will be impossible to lose because the other team can't. So yeah, really hard, really amazing. I'm leaving after this. So we're currently in France, and I'm coaching a U20 team, which is also I offered to volunteer coach, and then they invited me to come to France. But after this, I will go back to Oregon to look at master's programs, jobs I don't know. And so it's definitely quite heartbroken to be leaving them. I've promised Revolution that I will be back within a year and be making yearly visits. In a way, I just have to think of it as like vacation in Oregon and really my real life back there. But yeah, just incredible community, incredible people, very hard, but so it goes.